Hello everyone! Welcome back to the studio. Forgive my filthy gardener fingernails. Today we're doing a sketchbook tour. The sketchbook. As you can see from its condition, almost as gross as my fingernails, this sketchbook has been through a lot. I've had it for nearly 5 years. No, over 5 years. Don't keep a sketchbook for that long. The paper will degrade, especially if you take it out into the rainforest, but also if you keep it for 5 years. Seriously, finish your sketchbooks faster. In my defense, this isn't my only sketchbook. I have been sketching elsewhere, so it's not that I'm this inactive, and also I was super chronically ill for a lot of that time, which is also why I haven't been posting on YouTube very much. But I am feeling a bit better and found some coping strategies, so hopefully I'm here more. Yay! This cover was pretty ugly and beaten up, so I decided to pretty it up with writing on the front and also adding some stickers. These are not my stickers. These stickers are by Helena Smythe, also known as Alpine Aita. I will leave her links down in the description. However, I also paint a lot of mushrooms, which is of course why these appeal to me, and I have some cool mushroom paintings that I could make into stickers. Would you like some stickers? Let me know down in the comments below. Why am I talking so fast? I don't know. I think it's because I've recorded this video several times and just realized that I didn't have my microphone on, so we're doing this voiceover again. Yeah. This sketchbook functioned as a nature journal and travel sketchbook through a bunch of trips that I took in 2019, and then it stopped being used as much. And I just had to finish filling it up. So without further ado, let's get into this. On the first page, let's get past these end papers. I've got this sketch of a watercolor palette. I made a whole series about this watercolor palette. It's up above. Yeah, this is the watercolor palette that I took to Australia when I traveled to Australia last year. No, not last year. In 2019. I may be talking fast, but my brain is foggy. When we got there in Melbourne, I sketched these ink gum leaves and flowers, and then I did these watercolor gum leaves. This painting is where I fell in love with Potter's Pink as a watercolor pigment. Never thought I would say that until I did. We spent a few days with some family friends. They took us out to breakfast. There were some nice little wattle sprigs on the table. That's acacia for non-Aussies. And I sketched them in ink and did some color studies. This is a way that I find very effective of getting the same information that you would from a full color painting, but in a much faster and easier way. The breakfast place was near the Dandenong Hills. Am I pronouncing that right? We visited this lovely forest of tree ferns, and I found this cool little feather. Also, I got to visit with some sulfur-crested cockatoos. All in all, a really fun day trip. The next day, we went out to a park. I sketched again some gum leaves and pods. I wasn't super impressed with what I managed on location. That's watercolor and colored pencil, I believe. I started sketching one of the trees that was hanging over me, but the sun was kind of crazy and it started raining. Eventually we got picked up, so most of that sketch is done from a photo. On the next page, we have the beginning of the GNSI conference. So this was the GNSI conference in Brisbane in 2019 at the University of Queensland. I found this beautiful piece of lichen and I sketched it front and back in between sessions at the conference. I think I might have actually skipped a session because I just needed my brain to rest, and I sketched this instead. Also, one morning we were out for breakfast and the cafe had this bunya pine hanging over us. I thought the sky was just really stunning. Have any of you noticed that depending on where you are in the world, the range of colors in the sky appears really different? I don't know what all goes into that. If somebody understands why this happens, let me know down in the comments below, but I spent a lot of time in Australia staring at the sky. The other thing that really caught my eye about these bunya pines is that they were really silhouetted against the bright sky, so you didn't really see a whole lot of color. You just saw the silhouette of the pine. I thought it was just a really cool look. I really enjoyed it. On the next page, I found a seed pod. Didn't really get to finishing it. I don't even remember where I found it and what the seed pod was. So that's a bit of a waste. This page, I've got some aerial tree roots. I didn't write down what the tree was. It was around the University of Queensland somewhere. Yeah. Then I was, flip back. Later that week, we were out on a hike and I tried to sketch some of the bush turkeys. Birds are super weird. Still haven't gotten the hang of that. This next page was a workshop with Mally Moore, who does this really cool technique with colored pencils and masking fluid and watercolor and layers them up in all sorts of different ways to create resists and textures. It was only a 3-hour afternoon workshop, so I didn't get as much out of it as I feel like I could have. I feel there's a lot to learn there, but we just didn't have the time to really get to it. But I did paint this neat seed pod. Most of these pages don't have nearly as much the writing in them as I would like, and as much as I put into some of my sketchbooks now. I was still getting the hang of creating nature journal pages that have more than just images. I've sort of resisted putting words in my sketchbook, but I think that it's really useful. So you'll see a little bit more of that as we go on. This is one of my favorite pages. This was a field trip to Moreton Island, and I painted this little landscape. I really love what happened with the clouds, where they just cauliflowered. That's just how the paint naturally acted. This was a really quick sketch. I actually have a video making this sketch. I will link it up above. Here I did something that I've been doing increasingly in more recent paintings, which is combining this much looser landscape with some notes and also a few little studies up in the corner where I collected some shells from the beach and then I painted them in a much more detailed way later, so that I can have both the impression of the scene in person as well as some of the cool artifacts that I found there. That Moreton Bay outing also included a snorkeling venture. I was going to paint some fish. Obviously this is not a fish, this is a life drawing pose, and then I guess I interrupted that life drawing session and started in a different sketchbook. I don't know what's happening on this page. Whoops. I do tend to skip around in my sketchbook and skip pages and come back to them, so I don't know. After the conference, my husband and I traveled to far north Queensland to Cape Tribulation. We stayed at Rainforest Hideaway and I sketched the view from our back deck as well as some of the fan palms that were around us. I thought the fan palm leaves were really cool. It was a huge challenge painting there though, because the humidity was right up around 100%, so nothing ever dried. You could just paint something and then leave it, and a half hour later the water would still be sitting there. Very, very interesting experience. They have some fascinating bright blue fruit. So there were two kinds in particular that we saw, a cassowary plum and a quandong. And so I sketched those two fruit. I took some notes, and I also thought it was really neat because this is where I started experimenting with using cobalt teal to create this sort of sheen like a, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting words. I'm sorry. This is my brain not working. Iridescence. Iridescence. I find that dropping in cobalt teal or another light, heavy pigment can create this sort of iridescent look. Then one of our outings, we were out at the beach. I think I wanted to paint but didn't have my paintbrushes. Oh, no, it says the watercolor palette was too soggy to transport, so I sketched in pen. And then I apparently stopped taking my notes here too. This is something that I really need to fix because I'm not going to remember it years later, so whoops. I did find a bunch of cool shells and stuff, coral fragments, at Mile Beach, and I sketched them in my sketchbook because you're not supposed to bring them away from Australia. The Australians are very fussy about things coming in and out of the country. I think I did smuggle a couple. But I also just wanted to put these little finds in my sketchbook because there's no laws against that. Then we have another bird sketching one. I am very proud on the bottom left of this orange-footed scrub fowl, how alive it looks, like how it's stepping forward. I think I did a really good job of that. Most of the others, they're scrub fowl, but that one is really neat. Really like that. And then on the next page, I've got another one of my very loose landscapes. I really enjoyed doing these in Australia, and I've really enjoyed doing them since then. This is Mile Beach looking south and Cape Tribulation, and that was one of our last days there. Then we took a trip back to Cairns. We had to cross the Daintree River, so there's this little river cruise as you're crossing. And so I was looking at some crocodiles. I don't think I really did these crocodiles justice, but I was enjoying sketching them. We got back to Cairns and went to the Botanic Garden, and I sketched some cycads and a heliconia. Alas, I didn't catch the most interesting part of that particular scene, which was a hummingbird feeding from that heliconia. Whoops. I did have the thought to actually write that down on this sketch, so that's a positive. We were in Cairns for a couple of days, so the evening on one of the first days we went out into this central area where they had these fig trees, and they have these cool aerial branches that come down to the ground, and they'd done this neat thing where they had up lighting on the trees in various colors. So this one was blue, so they were shining up this trunk. It was really otherworldly looking. I think I wanted to also sketch something beside this, but I never got around to it. I also didn't write any notes. Maybe I'll write some notes now, or probably not. Then I went back to the Botanic Garden at Cairns. I did genuinely go there a bunch. So I saw these really cool trees with these really cool seed pods. I don't actually, I've looked this up and I've since forgotten what they are, and I never wrote it down. I did this sunlit painting, which I really like how that came out. And I also did a sketch of the seed pod. Then we went back to Melbourne. So that's where we were flying out from. We spent some more time with our family friends. We visited some museums and wandered around downtown a bit. It was super foggy, so the sky was cool colors again. And then this is actually from the airplane window. I was going to do a bunch of these guys, but apparently I only did one. Here's a page of just watercolor mixes. No idea what I was mixing here. But sometimes I just like playing with color mixes. Yeah. And then some flower studies, and of course, hopefully, I didn't write down what the flowers were. Whoops. I was teaching a nature journaling class, and I used this sketchbook as sort of just a rough demonstrating space. So whatever I was talking to students about in the various classes, I would just pull up my own sketchbook and do a quick little demo. So there's a few messy pages in here, some of them with working in graphite, which I hate working in graphite, but we were working in graphite, so there we go. If you're finding this all very inspirational, haha, you can join my Patreon, where I have an exclusive workshop that I'm starting for just patrons in ink and watercolor. So no graphite, ink and watercolor sketching on the go. I'll leave my Patreon link down below and some details about the workshop. Again, here's another page with some nature journaling class stuff, and then this is a sketch I did on my own along the Grand River near my house. I did a landscape sketch and then sketched some of the plants that I was seeing along the trail. After one of my nature journaling workshops that I was offering, I was walking home and I found a window strike, a dead Baltimore Oriole, which has hit the window on a transit shelter. And I scooped it up with a bag that one of my students provided, and I took it home, and it lived in my freezer for a good long while. And I painted this little portrait of that poor little Baltimore Oriole using these lovely paints from Sela Paint Company, owned by my friend Elijah. These are really, really, really good paints. I also made a video of this whole process, so I will link that up above. Anyway, then the Baltimore Oriole went back into my freezer. You'll see more of my Baltimore Oriole later. And this is late 2019. I was starting to get really sick, and this is where the sketchbook starts getting a bit weird. So this was a commission that I was working on. I mean, obviously this is not the commission. I will maybe flash the commission above. Not sure about that. The client for this commission had a bunch of questions about things that I could add. So I was demoing this while at a conference. I don't know what the circles beside it are. They may have been related. I'm not sure. The other thing that's beginning to be noticeable is that you can start to see that the paint here, like, it's resisting. So this next page, I actually pasted in a bunch of sheets. This is a workshop that I took with John Pastoriza-Pignol at the American Society of Botanical Artists annual conference in 2019. It was in Pittsburgh. I attended this workshop, and it was a really, really neat workshop. Definitely really enjoyed that. He has a neat approach to mapping out shadows with different colors that I've somewhat borrowed and adapted in some of my work. But this is the workshop that he offered, was about painting values and mapping out colors. So this is his palette and his recommendations for mixing. The next page is some random color splodges of color mixing. I think just some ideas I had about different colors I could mix that might be interesting. I don't know if there was any particular purpose to these color mixes, but I really enjoyed them. Yeah, this was fun. These next two pages were for a video. I came up with this little hex pattern honeycomb to swatch the Billy Scholl by Sennelier watercolor set. So I got this in sample form, and then I swatched it and did some mixes just for fun over on the next page. These paints were sent to me by Dan Barrett. I will leave his channel links down below if I remember. Dan, if I forget to link you, do remind me. Also, there's a video up above. I actually did 2 videos on this set, I believe. Again, I'll leave a link up above if I remember to. And so I did some glazing tests comparing Schmincke and Sennelier watercolors, and then I also painted this, it's called a flowering maple. Not related to maples in any way. This is from the Pittsburgh Botanical Garden. I think it might be called something else. Yeah. Then these are some sample watercolors that I purchased while I was in Australia. They're Art Spectrum brand. So I tested them up above, and then I decided that I wanted a darker color to mix, so I added in some gray ochre by Sela Paint Company, and I did this little color wheel sample thing, and then I painted a scrub fowl. I'll leave a link. Moving right along, here's something. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea when I painted it. I have no idea what the purpose was. I'm actually quite confused by this page. I don't remember how it happened. Yeah, my brain is super foggy. And then I painted this thing. I think I was just testing the paper because I was noticing that the paper was doing weird resist things, and I kind of wanted to get through this sketchbook at this point. Then I did this, which was going to be a video series and ended up getting cut short. This is a liatris flower that I was going to do a whole series on, start to finish, how I build a large watercolor painting, and then other projects got in the way, and other projects are still very much in the way, so I don't know when or if this will ever get finished. But I did this ink study and these watercolor studies, and there's more on the next page with some measurements and some playing with masking fluid. I hate masking fluid. I'm not sure which I hate more, masking fluid or graphite. If you like masking fluid or graphite, I'm sorry, we can't be friends. I'm kidding, of course, we can be friends, but yeah. I'll leave some links to those videos. Okay, next, this thing. This is an on-location sketch. I went out with my friend Alicia, and I sketched this. And then we also took a bunch of photos, and I made some paintings. These ones. that the paintings took several years to get done, but they're done now, and Alicia can hang them in their new house. Hooray! The next page had been left blank, I think, because I was thinking I might want to plan something related to that commission, and then I didn't. More recently, I got a Pentel Pocket brush pen and was testing it with some quick poses over on Line of Action. I will link that. Yeah. Then here is another one of those things that I only vaguely remember doing. I believe that the point of this exercise was I was trying to build a palette of perfect complements. So I was trying to find matching colors where each one cancels the one opposite as closely as possible, so that if you mix them, you get black. And apparently I didn't get as far as I wanted with that, because I didn't even finish this color wheel. I don't really know what I was doing here. Yeah, that makes me sad. What doesn't make me sad is the Wild Wonder Conference. I attended this in 2020. It was all online that year. I think it's now partially, like half online. Don't quote me. That is a nature journaling conference, and they had this whole series of streamed workshops. It was a bit interesting to be doing nature journaling online from my home desk, but the instructors were really cool, and there was a lot of neat stuff. So a bunch of the next pages are just from those workshops, notes and sketches. I find these, even though they were streamed afterwards, I tried to do them live, but I found it just exhausting to be doing these workshops in real time. This is with Bethan Burton. Loved this workshop. Bethan is really involved in the nature journaling community. It was also interesting because Bethan is in Australia, and so it's this like weird throwback back to Australia, which is where about half of this sketchbook was done. But I painted these pages from the comfort of my own home in Kitchener, Ontario. I will leave some links to Bethan, I hope. Again, trying to leave this many links is going to be tricky. This was an virtual field trip to the Atacama Desert. This is where I started experimenting with these little maps that I have across the corner of pages. That's something that I've been doing a lot in more recent sketchbooks. And here was a live painting of animals workshop, but online. This is much more recent. This is for my Invisible series, which is exploring my experiences of invisibility through urban nature, and also my experiences as with invisible disability and invisibility as a queer person in a straight marriage. And so I'm designing some textile designs, which will be made into, I'm working with a corsetier who makes my medical corsets. Ooh, this project is funded by the Ontario Arts Council. So I will link the Ontario Arts Council and display their logo, as I am required to do. Many thanks to the Ontario Arts Council's Disability Arts Project Fund for funding this project. Okay, and moving right along, here we have, I put together a Roman Schmal Aquarius palette with 28 Roman Schmal Aquarius watercolors. I have a bunch of paints from Roman Schmal Aquarius because I've been sent the new releases several times. So I wanted to be able to use these paints, so I chose a bunch of paints that made a functional palette together, and I put this together. On the left, I've got some mixes that I was experimenting with. On the right, I've got the layout of that palette. I've since cannibalized that palette to make my own palette. I will link down below the Wild Curiosity palette, and up above some more information about it. I now have my own custom curated Roman Schmal Aquarius palette. Woohoo! Here are some 30-second poses from Line of Action. I'll link Line of Action down below. They're a great resource for doing quick figure studies. If you can't make it out to a life drawing session, this is the next best thing. Lots of fun. These are quick 30-second poses, and then over on the other side, I believe I actually used some of the colors from my Wild Curiosity palette. Again, link down in the description below. That's my curated Roman Schmal Aquarius palette, available exclusively through my website. And I painted this fun abstracted, that's the word, page of wood grain. I paint a lot of tree bark, so wood grain. And now we travel way back in time, back to the Wild Wonder Conference, painting plankton. I think I'd originally left a bunch of blank pages in the sketchbook because there were workshops that I wanted to go back to, but honestly, I only got in the ones that I could attend live and had the brain for, and never got back to them after. Anyway, this was a really cool workshop. I decided to paint all in Prussian blue in order to create a sort of cyanotype look, which also fit, and I also did my neat little painting of a map in the corner thing, which I've been having a lot of fun with. Yeah. Okay, next is a sort of meditative painting tree rings thing. I do this to relax sometimes. You can probably see it in some of my sketchbooks. This is painted with Misty Morning. One of my favorite paints. Woof, the sketchbook is huge. Okay, yeah, so this is a Do any of you have like a project that is that just lives rent-free in your head, something that you want to do in the future? This is mine. I have Ernst Haeckel's Hexacoralla first edition print hanging above my bed. It's super inspirational. It was a wonderful gift from a family friend, and every time I see Romanesco cauliflower, I think, wouldn't that be cool as like a Hexacoralla like Ernst Haeckel print. So I've been playing with how I would set up that painting for years, like a decade. And one day I'll get around to it. Let me know down in the comments below if that is something that you're interested in and what your crazy pie in the sky lives rent free in your head projects of your own, whether they're art or like whatever else you do. Let me know down in the comments below. I love hearing people nerd out about things. Like I nerd out about things. Yeah. Also, yes, my pronunciation is wrong. My pronunciation is wrong. It's Hexacoralla. I am aware of this, and yet I've been screwing that up for ages. This is an on-location series of thumbnail sketches for a big painting in my On the Skin of Giants series. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking outside. My husband's gonna go get her. She's asking to come in because it's way too warm. Anyway, these sketches are, yeah, therefore, things. I'm making a painting, yeah. Moving right along. Okay, now we can visit this Baltimore Oriole again. So I had a Baltimore Oriole. It was sitting in my freezer for some time. No, not 4 years. I did just skip back and forth. This was painted probably sometime in 2020, maybe 2021. And I pulled my little frozen Baltimore Oriole out. I did a few different angles of his face. When he thawed out a little, I did a spread wing, and I did another portrait of the top of that Oriole before giving him a respectful burial. So yes, I did not kill any birds. I did not desecrate any birds. I just did some studies, and then I gave him a respectful burial instead of him rotting by the side of a transit shelter. Then there is this stuff. Lots of unfinished projects and color swatches, because by this point I was very sick of this sketchbook where the paint doesn't sit properly on the page. I wanted it done. And so I painted some swatches. This was a few years ago. I don't actually remember what these swatches are for. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.